Okay, it is 9 a.m. and I call a special meeting of the Benton County Board of Commissioners to order. Anybody care to give an invocation? Pledge of allegiance. We can do that one.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. And I guess women of executive.
So officially call the meeting to order, and then if you could do, Linda, do a roll call.
Okay.
Are you gonna call the meeting to order?
Call at this time, I call the special meeting of the Benton County Board of Commissioners to order.
Stone,
Here.
Campbell,
Here.
Schofield, here.
Okay, are we consider approval of adoption of agenda?
Mr. Chair, I make the motion that we approve the adoption of the agenda.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
So commissioners, I'm gonna ask that you do the executive session as part one and part two. When I originally put the agenda together, I wasn't sure if we would need another executive session, but I do have a couple of things that I would like to update if you have time in executive session. So when whoever makes the motion, if you could just do part one, potential litigation matters regarding Department of Social Services, and then part two, receiving legal advice regarding specific legal questions. If you could put both of those, then we don't have to go in and then come back out.
Okay. So do I have a motion to go into executive session?
Move the board to executive session.
And yeah, the whole statute.
I gotta read the whole thing. All right.
Yes, please.
Suit of CRS 24-6-4024B. Conference with the attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice regarding potential litigation matters related to the Department of Social Services.
And then part
And I read the
two.
second one too?
Yeah,
All right.
please.
Executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024B. Conference with the attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice regarding specific legal questions.
I will second.
It's been moved and seconded to, oh yeah, roll call.
Stone,
Aye.
Campbell.
Aye.
Schofield, aye.
Motion approved. The motion was to go into part A of executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024B, conference with the attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice regarding potential litigation matters related to the Department of Social Services. And part B, executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024B, conference with the attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice regarding specific legal questions.
Do you have your script with you?
Yes. All right, it is.
904.
Huh?
904.
Well, date is 29th of July, 2026. Time is 9:04. My name is Alan Stump and I am the presiding officer. As required by the open meetings law, this executive session is being electronically recorded. Also present at this executive session are the following persons. Cosby Gallegos, Linda Moss, Rose Puglisi, Jennifer Schofield, myself, Phil Hemphill, and Wick Turner.
And then
Online is Tanya Burnett. I caution each participant to confine all discussion to the stated purpose of the executive session, and that no formal action may occur in the executive session. If at any point in the executive session, any participant believes that the discussion is going outside the proper scope of the executive session, please interrupt the discussion and make an objection. This is an executive session for the following purpose or purposes. CRS 24-6-4024B, conference with the attorney for the board for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions. Board and the board attorney is present.
This is Rose Puglisi, County Attorney, because this executive session involves legal advice and advising the board that no recording be kept and the recorder be turned off.
I'll make. That we leave executive session and return to the special meeting.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we exit executive session and return to the special meeting. Any discussion?
Stump,
Aye.
Campbell.
Aye.
Schofield.
Aye.
All right, I hereby attest that this recording reflects the actual contents of the discussion at the executive session and has been made to satisfy recording requirements of the open meetings law. For the record, if any person who participated in the executive session believes that any substantial discussion of any matters not included in the motion to go into the executive session occurred during the executive session, or that any improper action occurred during the executive session in violation of the open meetings law, I would ask that you please state your concerns for the record at this time. Hearing none, I will hand the tape to the secretary to retain for a 90-day period, the clerk, instead of the secretary. The time is now
9:58.
9:50.
9:58.
9:58. And we now conclude the executive session and return to the open meeting. The next agenda item is
Motion to recess until 11.
I'll make that motion that we recess until 11 a.m.
Second.
been moved and seconded to recess the special commissioner meeting until 11 a.m. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Pause that motion.
Whip, do you know if Bry, does he have packet?
Sorry about that. Y'all hear us on the?
Yep, thank
Yes.
All right. So Grid United, we work on projects that connect the grids, helps with reliability, resiliency, helps keep prices as low as they can be, and that's to the benefit of all customers. Three-Corners Connector is a project that goes from Pueblo down to a substation that'll be built near Diamond, Oklahoma. It's about 300 miles. We have been working, like I said, for about 4.5 years on trying to figure out what the best route is, talking with landowners and communities along the way to try to help inform that. It'll carry up to 3,600 megawatts of power, which is quite a bit. You know, if that was all just being used by households, there'd be in the millions of households with this project that would be able to serve. And one way to think about it too is it really is a regional project. We're not tying the city of Guy and the city of Pueblo together. We're really tying kind of the western portion of SPP, which is the operator for the grid on the east side of the line, and most of like southern Colorado together. So it's open to all sources of generation. It's not, we're not tying to a wind farm or a solar farm or a gas power plant or coal or anything. It's a power line that connects the two grids to be able to move power between both ends. It goes across Pueblo, Otero, and back to counties from Colorado, and then Oklahoma. We go through Sonora and Texas counties. It does allow power to flow back and forth both directions, and that can change, and really just a split second depending on what the needs are on both sides. Overall, it's about a $2 billion project. These things are not cheap to do. Anytime you connect two grids, you've got to have converter stations, and those converter stations are pieces of equipment that convert between AC and DC power. Both just between the two of those will be one near Pueblo, one near down in Oklahoma. Those are about $1 billion, and then the line itself is right around $3 million a mile. So we'll go through some of the details on what it looks like and heights and stuff like that here in a few minutes. But I've got some colleagues with us this morning. Just want to make sure we had enough of the team that if y'all have questions, we have experts here and not just relying on just me to be able to answer questions. But I do want to turn it over to Jack Middleton. Jack is our consultant that works for us, but through Tetra Tech. They're an environmental consulting firm that work on projects all over the country, and they're helping us out with the routing as well.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. So this slide just talks a little bit in general about the routing process that is undertaken for the entire route, including the portion in Bent County. I think the unique thing here is Grid United has sought feedback prior to the permitting process, and that's trying to identify areas where folks want the project on their land. And this talks a little bit about a flow chart that goes through how we assess alternative routes and how the route gets built through the landscape. The first is refinement, where we do a constraints analysis, and what we look at is biological, environmental issues, land use, existing infrastructure that may prohibit or make a location of a transmission line difficult. And some of those, like the agricultural sites and the biological environmental, have laws and regulations associated with those. So there's certain areas that you are prohibited from crossing. And then there's also areas where there's unique habitat or protected cultural sites where you're also prohibited from moving the line, or there may be a specific offset from those sites for the line. So this goes through the process, how we designed a preliminary route according to those constraints. That route was then refined according to federal, state, and agency feedback. So Grid United met with multiple state and federal agencies along the line. They provided feedback on where they thought the line should go or would not be a good place for it. And that line was then adjusted from those constraints as well. And then there's engineering constraints of certain areas and soils and stuff where the line can't be built just because it cannot function in those areas. And again, local official field feedback, something that Grid United did extensively with meetings and landowner dinners to try to get feedback specifically on individual parcels of where the route should go or should not go. Then you have what we call a preferred route. And that is also kind of continuously refined, where we meet with landowners, adjust the route, or we do some additional survey findings. Brian can talk a little bit about that on the cultural and biological side. And let's say we find something that is protected or is regulated by law, and we adjust the route again accordingly. And that is where we come to where we are now is our preferred alternative. And that's what's submitted for the various regulatory processes for each county in Colorado. And that's where we are right now. And then, of course, the permitting of the final route.
Sorry, Jack.
No, that's okay.
Cool. All right, Grady and I, as a company, across all the different projects we work on, we like to think of ourselves and have been told by folks that we work with that we do a good job at being stakeholder first, landowner first. We go out and try to talk to the landowners, see if we can get rights away. Not everybody wants it. We've had definitely some folks that didn't want it, and they're in most cases, on basically almost every case, we've been able to figure out some other way to go to get to be on people that we want to be on, that would like us to be there. Probably the most common question we've gotten from landowners is how many more miles can I get? You know, part of our strategy is we want to make sure we're paying enough to make it worth landowners' time. We've had 20, I guess we're over 20 now, but had about 20 different events where we've invited folks to come in and give input on the project, talk about things like terms on the right-of-way agreements, talk about things like, we get several landowners that say, I don't hate it, but I'd rather see it on my east line instead of the west line, or I'd rather see it on the other side of my house, something like that. And so we made about 116 different route changes all up and down the line based on landowner impact and landowner feedback. Part of the changes also, though, are we have kind of voluntarily, we don't cross any federal land. And so there's a whole, excuse me, there's a whole kind of permitting regime that we don't have to go through, but we have decided that we do want to make sure that we're reaching out to tribes. And so we had 17 different tribes participate and come out and do tribal surveys along the line on everywhere that we had permission for them to be able to go. They did find a lot of resources. This is an area that's got a lot of history going back a long time. And so we were able to report those. And we're still in the process of making some slight adjustments, not changing landowners or anything, but slight adjustments to make sure that we're respecting the things they found and to be able to make sure that we're not going to have an undue impact to them. Another thing we realized is, we're kind of the new kids on the block. We're not from here. We want to make sure that we're being a good partner. And so starting out this project about 4.5 years ago, we decided, we want to make sure that we're getting plugged into the community. We want to make sure that we're being just generally a good neighbor. And so you've probably seen, I don't think I know any of you, but you've probably seen us we're at every junior livestock sale up and down the valley. We're sponsoring everything from Cattlemen's Association stuff to Benton College County Cattle and Horse Growers Association to golf tournaments, so you name it. We've also got a community investment program that we've been working with through the Southeast Colorado Economic Development District. And every 6 months, we take applications from nonprofits. We've done I guess we're over 500,000 now, which doesn't count kind of sponsorships and stuff, but in grants from everything for between lots of helping hands, food banks, fire and police departments, to you name it. It's been really good to see the impact that we're able to have kind of up and down the valley. And I'd say that's been one thing that I've been really happy to be able to do. And I'd like to say it's just out of the goodness of our hearts, but we do realize that it's part of the business plan. It's something that it's important for us, and we think it's important for companies like ours to get out there and have a good impact where we can. So happy to be able to do that. Just want to talk a little bit about some of the benefits. I know I covered that it helps reliability and things like that, but here are just a few more points to kind of hit on that. Most of the time when there are kind of electric emergencies where the grid is short and it's at risk of needing to shut down, a lot of those times are because there's a big weather event, and a lot of times it's winter, sometimes it's summer, but you've got a bad winter storm that's either through icing or through wind or through freezing plants up where they can't run. You've got issues, but part of the solution that projects like this help provide is
because this line is 300 miles long and because it connects the whole eastern grid, which has got thousands and thousands of different plants, with the western grid that's got thousands of plants, you're able to share with your neighbors, and it's a long enough distance away that the chances that you've got problems on one side at the same time, that you've got problems on the other side are pretty low. So that's one benefit. Another benefit is it's pretty common throughout the year for like almost half the hours out of the year right now. Wholesale power prices in Oklahoma are zero or negative. They've got tons and tons of wind. They don't have nowhere to go. It's not only wind, but that's part of what kind of affects the pricing. That doesn't happen here on this side. So having a connection like this allows you, whenever prices are high on this side and they're low on the other side, allows you to import power, and that saves customers money as well. So it also helps economic development through construction. You know, this is about the line portion of it, which here in Becker County, we'll get through. Christine will tell us a little bit about what's here, but it's one fiber repeater station and some line. And with that, it's, you know, about a 2-year construction period probably, but it does bring some folks to help keep the restaurants full, helps increase the tax base. And then also in Becker County, or in Benton County, excuse me, there'll be about $12 million or so in direct payments to landowners for that right of way, and we see that a lot of that money gets reinvested in the community as well. A little bit here on taxes. I won't belabor this, but you know, we do have a consultant that helps us out with kind of what the tax impacts they think are going to be, and they think the kind of initial revenues in that $200,000 range, but up to about $4.5 million for the life of the project. School district, y'all can read the numbers, but you know, in the tens and over $10 million in taxes for the project as well, plus all those kind of indirect benefits. And then Christine is going to talk to us a little bit about just the kind of what are we planning on doing here in Benton County if we get permission.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Christine Lombardi. I'm part of the engineering team that's working on the Three Corners connector. So I'll be talking about the actual structures and the design that's going into this project. So you can see our map here. The green line is the route of the transmission line right now. And we have a little bit over 47 miles of the high voltage direct current transmission line here in Benton County. We also have one fiber repeater station, which we'll show an example of, but it's a small hut that basically allows the communication of the transmission line back and forth and helps reinforce the fiber strength of signal, basically. So in addition to the transmission line and the fiber repeater station, there'll also be access roads associated with the transmission line, both temporary access roads to allow for the construction and the hauling of materials, and then permanent access roads for the operations and maintenance of the line. And then we'll have temporary workspaces along the transmission line as it gets built. So around every single structure will be a work pad for the crews to erect the structure, install the foundation, put up the wires. And we'll also have temporary pulling and tensioning sites as they do the wire work. And then outside of the right of way, we'll have laydown yards where they can store materials kind of efficiently and close to the project locations to then bring out to each of the structures, and then concrete batch plants. This is what the structures will look like, the actual transmission line. So we're looking at a profile view here. And the vast majority of our structures will be this tangent structure. This is kind of the structure that operates when the transmission line's in, you know, long straight lines, and it helps support the wires to keep them, you know, at a safe distance above the ground. And this is what most of our structures will look like. And then where we have angles, where the line turns or goes through changes in its location, we'll have angles and dead ends, which will be a two-pole structure. The structures themselves will be steel, and they'll be a weathering material. So they'll kind of be that brown rusted material. And they range in height really depending on how long the spans are. So how far apart the structures are, as well as what the topography is and what it's potentially crossing over. But the typical range is 115 feet to 180 feet for the structures themselves, with an average right around 150 feet. Our typical span, so the space in between three structures, about 1,300 feet. So we've got 4 to 5 of these structures per mile. And we do have one long span here in Benton County that's a little bit over 2,000 feet, and that's just based on what we're crossing with a river crossing and the topography in the area. The structures will be on a concrete foundation. Oh, sorry. The structures will be on a concrete foundation, which will basically support them below grade. And the structures will be bolted to that. And the average kind of diameter of the foundation is 8 to 10 feet for these structures. And then the right of way, so the distance kind of on either side is a total of 200 feet, with the centers mostly spaced in there. So about 100 feet on either side. And this is an example of the fiber repeater station that I mentioned. So there'll be one here in Benton County. We've got a few across the project, and what this is for is really to help with the communication on the line. So in addition to the actual power that the transmission line's carrying, it also has a fiber optic cable that helps send connection and information across the substations and the transmission line. And that needs to be reinforced and boosted. And that's what this station provides. So it'll be about 60 to 80. Yeah, the fenced area will be about 60 to 80 feet. It'll be located within the right of way or directly adjacent to it, so really close to the actual project. And this will include communication equipment and be fenced in, as well as have a permanent access, like a sidewalk or a driveway to it. And it doesn't need to be like a manned station, so it'll be permanently operating without on-site personnel. And then as far as the schedule, like Bryant mentioned, we've been working on this project since 2022. And a lot of the time since then has been about the routing that Jack talked about, as well as working with landowners, the communities, and the engineering design. And we're at a point now where we're going through our permitting process and the procurement of the actual project. So all of the materials could start this year, with the earliest possible construction being next year, but that's going to depend on kind of the commercialization of our project and when it makes sense to build it. But the construction will probably take about 3 to 4 years total for the entirety of the converter stations, as well as the transmission line throughout Colorado and Oklahoma.
That's it.
Okay. I guess I'll start with some questions. You're crossing state, right, not state lands.
Yes, sir. And we already have our respite in the state land proceedings.
So the state like to stay on section lines.
Yes, sir.
Does that impact landowners,
Uh,
private landowners, by having to stay on the state section lines?
we're not staying on the state section lines everywhere. It kind of depends, like, if there's not a good reason to be off of them, then we're on the section lines. I don't think we've had any comments from anybody in Benton County specifically, but I know we had some in at least one other county where the private landowners really would prefer it to be on private, just because, like, so they would be able to get the revenue instead of the state. And the state, honestly, the state, I think we pay less on state land than we do on private. And so we did actually move quite a bit, like if we had the option to move it onto private instead of state. I don't think, we can work a little closer at the map, but I don't think that was the case here. It was just based on kind of where we needed to go based on topography and kind of landowners on both sides and all up and down, kind of all up and down the line.
Of the 6% of the landowners that have not came to terms yet,
Right.
How many individuals approximately would that be?
That's one, and that's one for the whole project up and down the whole 300 miles.
Okay.
And it happens to be here in Benton County.
Okay. County roads,
Yes, sir.
moving concrete trucks, supplies, towers.
Right.
Anything that is damaged,
Yes, sir.
you guys will repair.
And we cover that in our application.
I read a
We
little
would
bit
do
about that.
kind of a road use agreement with the county before construction. We pay for surveys to go out and figure out, what's the condition of the roads today, what needs to be upgraded before we get out there, so it doesn't just get torn up irreparably or just be so super expensive to be able to fix. And then we talked with the county kind of early on, and we're still open to, there's some options as we're negotiating that agreement on would the county rather kind of manage and do that work themselves, or have it work done themselves, or us hire a contractor to do it? But there's a whole process we'll go through to negotiate all that stuff, and as we get closer to construction.
How many staging lots would be in Minnesota?
I don't think we know for sure.
I think we're still, like, that'll be part of the construction, the later, construction decision, but we'll normally have one every, 50-ish miles. And they're typically about 40 acres, and we'll work with local landowners typically who are interested in the rental income and the upgrades that we could provide with that.
So probably one,
Yeah.
maybe two.
How many construction crews do you have along the whole line
So
from Guyman, Pueblo?
it'll really just depend, and a lot of that's up to the contractor, which we're not to the point of selecting a contractor yet or hiring them, but generally for projects like this, that are long, just kind of in general, long transition projects, it's pretty common for them to break it up into not more than about 100 miles per crew, but depending kind of on a schedule also, if for whatever reason, because materials took longer or something else, we need to go faster, we can also break it up smaller and put more crews on it. So can't really answer your question exactly, but probably 3 or 4 is probably likely, could be more, probably not less.
Okay.
Concrete
Yes, sir.
will be mobile batch plants, or are you gonna use come
Yeah.
from Browers County, Otero County?
So more than likely, almost all will be mobile batch plants that'll be set up kind of strategically along the line, and that's also something that is generally up to the construction contractor on. The more we define, okay, you need to have a plant here and here and here, and you're gonna have this many, that tends to drive prices up. But if we say, y'all figure out the most efficient way to get this done, so I shouldn't say for sure where it'll be at or how many, but for some portions, I'd say like here in Benton County, it would be surprising to me if it wasn't all mobile batch plant. But for part of it, it's like close to Pueblo and close to Guyman, that could be something existing in town, but for most of the line, it's going to be mobile batch plants.
You'll re-veg all those lots and
Yes, sir.
set up spots.
Yes, sir. With the exception of, and we do cover this in the original vegetation requirements, but if that landowner would prefer to keep that as a yard that they could do something else with, or keep it open for somebody else to potentially use in the future, if that's what the landowner wants and we get permission, I'm not exactly sure on who all we would need to check in with, but we at least told our landowners like that could be an option if they want to keep it.
So some of these access roads, temporary roads, some of those could be, I guess, used by landowners after the project.
If they want to keep it, so there'll be
For ranch
some,
improvements.
for ranch improvement, like if it works for their purposes, it's their land. Like we need to be able to use it for our purposes, but it's open to them to use for their purposes if they want to use it.
This is direct current, right?
Yes,
So there
sir.
should not be any stray voltage.
Right, and another thing that is a little bit different, I didn't cover that earlier, but so between the points where we connect to the existing grids and those converter stations, it's alternating current, and there's about 10 miles of that on both ends. And then between the converter stations, and 100% of what's here in Benton County, it's DC. DC also doesn't, there's something you've got to worry about a little bit with AC that's called AC induced voltage, where if you've got fence lines or you've got pipelines or something, they'll kind of pick up some current. That doesn't happen with DC.
Okay.
Right. Good.
We'll now open our up to the public. Is there any?
I'll do the staff
Oh,
recommendation.
that's right. I'm sorry.
Because it's. That's from the public, maybe point. Thank you, Chair, Rose Complete Seat County Attorney. I have a couple of exhibits to admit today. copy of which would be handed to the clerk, to help us. I also, before I admit my exhibits, if you all will send us a copy of your presentation, that would be great. And then go through your record through your notes, just, of the exhibit A. Applicant's exhibit. And so we'll get that into the record as well. For you all, I have exhibit 1, and this was made publicly available. That is a link. The application was really fixed, as you can imagine, and so we have a link to the application, which is publicly available. That is exhibit 1. Notice of the public hearing before the Benton County Planning Commission. This notice was given, and proof of publication is exhibit 3 of the hearing notice. It was published in the Benton County Democrat. Number 4, the letter regarding mineral landowners. Three Corners Connector submitted a letter, and I confirmed in statute that it was not required to have mineral owner notifications. It was not subject to statute, so I have that just for the record. And then Mr. Chair, I'm gonna read into the record the staff recommendations. The date of the public hearing is July 29th, 2026, and this is long, so just bear with me, but I'll read it as quickly as I can and highlight the things that I think are most important. July 29th, 2026 at 10 a.m. for Planning Commission, and then we will have a Board of County Commissioners public hearing at 11 a.m. Place of the hearing is 725 Benton Avenue, Los Angeles, Colorado. The permit applicant is Three Corners Connector LLC, a Grid United Company. The request is to develop approximately 290 miles up to 525 kilovolt high voltage direct current transmission line between Pueblo, Colorado and Guymon, Oklahoma, which includes 47.4 miles of HVDC transmission line and 1 fiber repeater station. Here in Benton County, the transmission line route generally will run southeast to northwest through Benton County. The final application was deemed complete. The application was submitted by the applicant and be paid on or about April 27, 2026. The final application with all the requested attachments for the Benton County Planning and Zoning Regulations, section 5.02.03 was deemed complete on May 14, 2026. Notice to the applicant that the final application was deemed complete was provided on May 14, 2026. The publication of the public notice for the special use review permit regarding the application was published in the Benton County Democrat on July 2nd, 2026. Publication of the notice met the minimum 15-day publication requirement outlined in the Benton County Planning and Zoning Regulations, section 5.02.02. Written notice regarding the public hearing was sent out by certified mail to property owners adjoining the proposed project on or about June 29, 2026. Mailing of the notices met the minimum 15-day publication requirement outlined in the Benton County Planning and Zoning Regulations, section 5.02.02. There were no mineral owner notifications required for the attached letter from Three Corners Connector. Barring any discovery at the public hearing, it is the opinion of staff that the applicant has shown compliance with the Benton County Planning and Zoning Regulations. First, the use is compatible with all existing uses on land adjacent thereto, or appropriate measures have been taken to alleviate such incompatibilities. The use, two, the use, or B, that use will not unnecessarily scar the land or soil which such uses can be placed, leaving deleterious effects on the denuded slopes, uncovered oil pipes to be blown away, or scars upon areas of natural historic value. C, uses with unsightly aspects, odors, or noise are set back a sufficient distance from the adjacent property boundaries, and proper fencing or screening is provided to the adjacent property that is not adversely affected. D, the use shall comply with all applicable air and water pollution control legislation. And E, the use is consistent with the orderly pattern of development within the county, is consistent with the adopted master plan. The following development standards and conditions are our staff recommendations. We recommend approval of the special use review use permit subject to these conditions. No grading, site preparation, or construction activity may occur on the site until the special review use permit has been granted to the applicant. Before commencement of construction, Three Corners Connector LLC is to provide a $3.6 million revegetation financial guarantee or bond held in favor of Benton County. 10% or $360,000 shall be a cash deposit held with Benton County Treasurer. 90% of this amount, or $3,240,000, shall be represented by a bond issued in favor of Benton County. The bond must be renewed every 5 years. Revegetation and reclamation of the above described property must be properly completed and done, such that the vegetation and reclamation shall be approved by the Benton County Commissioners in accordance with the revegetation classification standards and special conditions for 1041 permits attached here too as Exhibit B and hereby reference. The applicant shall address any reasonable concerns or objections of any state or local agency or government that may arise during or after construction remains. Before commencement of the construction of the project, applicant shall verify to the commissioners and the Benton County Land Use Administrator that it has acquired all necessary easements or property rights to complete the project. Before commencement of construction of the project, applicant will submit verification to the commissioners and the Benton County Land Use Administrator that is complied with and received all necessary permits and approvals as applicable from local and state governmental entities. Applicant shall enter into a road use agreement with the county setting forth the roads to be used during construction and applicant's financial responsibility for repair or additional maintenance of the roads affected by construction. Mr. Chair, that goes to your question earlier about roads. Applicant shall comply with all applicable laws and regulations to avoid or mitigate interference with any significant wildlife habitat or adversely affecting any endangered wildlife species, unique natural resource, or historic landmark within the subject. Applicant shall comply with the following requirements. A permit shall be limited to the plan showing the application as mapped at the final hearing of the plan of the county commissioners, with the exception of any change in placement within the property of participating landowners or county right-of-way, which would not be considered a substantial change. So if they're going to change the project in any way that is not presented today, they would have to come back before you and go through this process again. Substantial changes from plans or development standards as shown or stated shall require applicant to apply for and obtain an amendment to the permit by the commissioners before such changes from the plans or development standards are permitted. Copies of all appropriate permits and approvals of federal, state, and local agencies obtained by applicant shall be forwarded to the Benton County Land Use Administrator. Any construction done within Benton County right-of-way will require a right-of-way permit obtained from the Benton County. So it says Benton County Public Works Department. For the record, I'm amending that to the Benton County Land Use Administrator. We don't have a Public Works Department here in Benton County. All disturbed areas shall be reclaimed in coordination with the affected landowners set forth in applicant's reclamation plan or in accordance with the landowner easements or licenses as applicable. Once construction and revegetation of the project is completed, the range management specialist shall be allowed access to sites to perform one inspection each year. The Benton County Land Use Administrator shall promptly forward to applicant copies of all reports and recommendations of the range management specialist. This would have to be hired by the county to take a look and do this inspection. When revegetation is established and has been deemed complete by the range management specialist, Benton County will release the revegetation bond and reimburse applicants 10% cash deposit. Applicant will not permanently dispose of waste within the project area. Applicant shall store and remove for final disposal in a manner that protects against surface and groundwater contamination, all liquid and solid waste as defined in the Solid Waste Disposal Site and Facilities Act. Applicant shall manage, store, and dispose of waste materials in a manner that reasonably controls debris, blowing debris, and other potential nuisance in compliance with applicable laws and regulations. To the extent feasible, applicant shall control through the project areas all fugitive dust, either from construction or transportation of equipment, in conformance with the applicable laws and regulations. Applicant shall comply with all the foregoing development standards set forth in this section, and non-compliance of any of the foregoing development standards shall be subject to the enforcement provisions of these regulations. The construction and operation of this project must meet and exceed all applicable federal, state, and local requirements, and the site is to conform with all applicable zoning and building permit requirements and be maintained to acceptable standards as of the date of this agreement. Applicant shall comply with all Benton County Health Department requirements in its entirety. Applicant shall comply with all state, county, local, and federal regulatory requirements, permits, decrees, and other approvals applicable to the development activity. This permit is limited to the project as described in the application as amended during this public hearing, either orally or in writing and as approved. Permit conditions include all agreements, representations of the applicant made during the public hearing process. Applicant shall notify the commissioner of any proposed change to the project, features, or operation. The commissioner shall determine whether an amendment to this permit would be required to ensure that the changes do not violate any standards in the Benton County regulations and will not violate the terms and conditions of this permit. If the commissioner determined that any material representation made by the applicant in the application or during the foregoing process is false or deliberately misleading, the commissioner may pursue an enforcement action for violation of this permit. Any material changes in construction, use, or operation of the project, together with applicant's commitments on the record, shall require a permit amendment. For these purposes, a material change shall be a change in the project which significantly changes the nature of the impacts considered in approval of the permit, including changes resulting from permits issued by other governmental organizations or an appropriate court of law. If applicant fails to take substantial steps to commence the activities for which the permit is issued within 60 months from the date of issuance of this permit, then the permit may be revoked or suspended by the commissioners following notice in public hearing. The applicant must provide a project status report within 24 months. The commissioners may, in its discretion, extend the time period to begin the project upon written request by applicant following a public hearing. The permit shall be valid indefinitely for the life of the project, provided the applicant is in compliance with the permit. If shown to be necessary, the commissioners may, in its discretion, extend the term of the permit upon written request of the applicant following a public hearing. The permit may only be transferred or assigned in whole or in written approval of the county commissioners. Any proposed transferee or assignee of the permit shall demonstrate it can and will comply with all the terms and conditions of the permit. So this is staff's recommendations of the guardrails to make sure that the community is compliant.
Questions?
Can I add one more thing into the record, and then we did receive one, although Brian, I feel like I saw something come through that maybe there might be another. Exhibit 6 is written comments. We did receive a support letter from State Representative Tyler and State Senator Rob Holton supporting this project. I believe there was one more that was received earlier today, which I entered into the record along with Exhibit 6 from the Farm Bureau Board District 4, supporting the project as well. And so that to the clerk to add into the record. The last thing I want to say, and then I'll open it up to questions, is that the current Benton County Planning and Zoning Manual has very limited amount of conditions that we can put into a permit. I will say that in working with the applicant, and I want to say on the record, they have exceeded what you all require in cost deposits. I mean, there's 3+ pages of recommendations, and they have agreed to all of those conditions, even though it is far beyond what you all would have required. So I want to put that on the record that I personally just appreciate the partnership and trying to make sure the community is protected, even in a way that far exceeds what you all would normally require. So I just wanted to put that on the record. Okay, Mr. Chair, what questions do you have?
My only question is, where does Benton County align with the other counties in this project on the revegetation bond?
So thank you, Mr. Chair, for that question. For the record, I'm also the Otero County attorney, and the basis of this permit actually conforms to what we have done in Otero County under their regulations. They have a 1041 permit for transmission lines, which requires a higher level of conditions, which is what the applicant has agreed to use, even though we don't have a 1041 permit today for transmission lines. So that bond is exactly the same.
Is that a per acre basis? How was surveyor?
So Excuse me, I will try to answer and then, if you want to ask the applicant any questions, that's fine too. Yes, it's per acre basis is how they did it, and the acreage is pretty much, if it wasn't exactly the same, it was almost exactly the same amount of acreage in Otero as it was in Bent, and so we use that same formula to come up with the cost deposit, in Bent County.
Does that pretty much mirror Broward and Pueblo County?
So we're not in Powers County and we're not to that stage yet in Pueblo County. BACA doesn't have any planning or zoning requirements, but we are working on a development agreement with them and it's still kind of in flux, but I would expect something along the same lines, yes, sir.
Yeah.
So the commissioners would hire an expert who determines who's the expert? What's the expert's qualifications?
And we can delve into that level of detail as we get down that road. Normally for 1041 projects, there is an agronomist that the commissioners have hired on their water projects. I don't know if they would use him.
This is not irrigated ground, right?
I don't believe it is. But I don't know if that company has, other purposes that they can use it for. I would anticipate, as county attorney, my recommendation would be that they went out to RFP, get a request for qualifications, and then determine, who can best serve the needs. So that would be my recommendation. And I will say, and while it's not necessarily pertinent to this hearing, as we go through our 1041s, which we've been working on transmission lines and solar and battery storage, I'll note that the application fee for a special use permit is $50. When we update our 1041 permits, that application fee will be larger. And the reason for that is to cover the county's costs. We never want the county to be out of pocket for a developer's project. We want to work with developers, but we don't want them to be out of pocket. We didn't account for that because we can't do that on this application, but I wanted to note why it's so important that we do have these regulations in your 1041s and that we update that so that the county can be reimbursed for these expenses. But obviously there's clearly fiscal benefit that could potentially be coming to the county that hopefully will help mitigate those costs. But I just wanted to also add that as we're working through 1041s.
Thank you. Anything?
No.
Now we'll open it up to public comment. Would you introduce yourself?
Yes.
For the records.
My name is Kyron Andriani. And I'm the Conservation Director for Southern Plains Land Trust. So good morning, Sharon Commissioners. I'm a resident of Bent County and I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I urge you to reject the proposed transmission line across Heartland Ranch because it would permanently impair publicly protected conservation lands, fragment a critical wildlife corridor, and authorize a use that is incompatible with the property's conservation easement. Heartland Ranch is not simply a private property. It is a land that has been voluntarily conserved in perpetuity for the benefit of the public through a deed of conservation easement held by Colorado Open Lands. The easement was established to protect the continuous reach of native shortgrass prairie and preserve the property's natural habitat, scenic open space, and educational values for future generations. This reflects Colorado's public policy. Colorado Revised Statute 33-1-101 declares that wildlife and their environment are to be protected, preserved, enhanced, and managed for the benefit and enjoyment of the people of this state. Colorado taxpayers have also invested heavily in conservation easements because they are producing lasting public benefits. The 2024 Colorado State University study estimated that conservation easement tax credits have generated between $35 and $57 billion in cumulative public benefits, returning approximately $31 to $49 in public value for every dollar invested. Those investments were made with the understanding that permanently protected lands would remain permanently protected. The proposed transmission line directly conflicts with that commitment. The conservation easement expressly prohibits conveying rights of way for utility corridors, whether temporary or permanent. A high voltage transmission line serves no conservation purpose and is fundamentally incompatible with the easement's stated objectives. The ecological impacts would also be significant and permanent. The proposal includes a 500-foot utility corridor extending approximately 5.8 miles across Heartland Ranch, together with a permanent 200-foot right-of-way affecting roughly 492 acres of protected lands. Construction is only the beginning. The line would require perpetual inspections, vegetation management, repairs, and maintenance access. Heavy equipment and vehicle traffic would repeatedly disturb a landscape that is legally protected for public conservation value. To this point, Three Corners also has no plan in place to ensure the safety of their workers from our free-roaming herd of bison. Heartland Ranch currently provides a continuous wildlife corridor supporting 12 species of greatest conservation need, identified by the Colorado State Wildlife Action Plan. Fragmenting this corridor would permanently reduce habitat connectivity, diminish one of the largest remaining expanses of conserved native shortgrass prairie in the Southern Plains. Moreover, Three Corners has made no provisions for mitigation of impacts to wildlife, which is a necessary component of energy development plans. The visual impacts will also be equally lasting. Steel transmission towers, overhead conductors, and wide cleared rights of way would permanently alter the scenic character of a landscape that the conservation easement was created to preserve. Ultimately, this decision is about more than one transmission line. It is about whether conservation easements in Colorado will continue to mean what they say. These agreements exist to protect important landscapes in perpetuity. If a prohibited utility corridor can be placed across protected conservation lands, it undermines public confidence in Colorado's conservation program and weakens the value of every conservation easement supported by taxpayers. I respectfully ask you to reject this proposal and require that transmission infrastructure be located where it does not permanently impair protected conservation lands and the public benefits they're established to preserve. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your comment. Go ahead.
I would also like to speak on behalf of Plains Land Trust, Mr. Chairman.
Please introduce yourself.
My name is Martin Hertz. I'm a board member for Southern Plains Land Trust. Should I do this from?
You're fine. It's a small room. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak. And let me introduce Southern Plains Land Trust. Is a not-for-profit. It owns and manages a series of preserves approaching about 53,000 acres in size, primarily in Bend County and surrounding area. I'm here to defend Southern Plains Land Trust private property rights. We believe in the importance of private property rights, and have always acted with that as our North Star. Every single expansion of our preserve system was in cooperation with willing sellers. You already heard from Kyron. He spoke about the environmental impact. I'm a finance guy, so I'm going to talk about the finance side of this. So here's just to give you a little sense for the economic impact of Southern Plains Land Trust in Bend County alone. In the past 3 years, Split has brought in over 10 million in new funding to Southeast Colorado, primarily here in Bend County. That alone is more than the economic benefit you list as for the construction of this project. Split has brought about a half dozen projects, half a dozen jobs to Bend County, and still looking to grow. Each year we pay $26,000 in property taxes. As a nonprofit, Split actually does not have to, but to be a good neighbor, Split continues to pay the property taxes. Also, Split brings hundreds of people to Southeast Colorado that normally would never visit. Recently, they hosted the inaugural Southern Plains Birding Festival, brought 80 people. There's regular volunteer work weekends, bringing hundreds more. Not to mention researchers from CSU and other universities. And there are many more tourism initiatives that are in the works, but all of them require Heartland Ranch, the main preserve that we're talking about here, to be intact. For the record, Split is not opposed to working with Three Corners Connect It's not as opposed to the work that Three Corners Connector is doing. The transmission line gets built, it will be a boost to local economy and the local tax base. That's wonderful. All we're asking for is in this process, our private property rights not get trampled. I'm here to formally contradict an inaccurate statement in Grid United's application. This is on page 21, where they state through Three Corners Connectors LLC stakeholder first approach, Three Corners Connector LLC has been in an ongoing conversation with the Southern Plains Land Trust regarding the location of the easement, but has not come to agreement on the proposed route. Mr. Coons has also made a similar state to the Otero County Commissioners earlier this year. That's available online, where he said that they have been working with a conservation group in Bend County to try to get something negotiated with them for years now. These statements just aren't true. Split just has to be clear here. We are not in an ongoing conversation. We have never been in an ongoing conversation. I'll provide more details. But why does this matter? This is something that was touched on just before. Per the application, it requires that the Planning Commission shall recommend and the Board of County Commissioners shall approve an application for special review use permits only. The county commissioners find that all of the following conditions are met. And number one, the use is compatible with all existing uses to the land adjacent thereto, or appropriate measures have been taken to alleviate such incompatibilities. Is that statement a true statement? It's not. The transmission line and its construction would cause irreparable harm to existing land uses at Heartland Ranch. It would heavily impact Split's ability to attract donors and supporters due to the damage to the viewshed, the native landscape, and the impact to the roaming animals. Much of that $10 million Split has brought into this area has come from taking donors to Heartland Ranch and letting them see the unobstructed views of the prairie. The birding festival alone that just happened a couple weeks ago. A donor came here to the preserve, I believe, for the first time, enjoy that piece, enjoy the beauty of down here, wrote a $100,000 check. That'll be turned around and invested here in the community. And as you heard from Kyron, number two is not the case. The mitigation is not adequate. We don't even know what would be required to fix the economic damage, let alone the ecological damage to the property. So Split therefore respectfully recommends that Three Corners Connector will withdraw their application until such time that these statements are true. There are other landowners in the community that would probably love to have the property, the transmission line run across their property. We're just not one of them. Here's a little more, just to go into more so you know about the meetings. To date, there has been only one meeting between Split and Three Corners Connectors. This occurred in July 3rd, 2024, so over 2 years ago. The executive director of Split, Henry Pollock, was not present at the meeting, nor was he even invited. No members of the Split board were present at the meeting. The only staff person present was Jay, the preserve manager at that time. And he attended that meeting, not even knowing that Three Corners Connector was going to be there. Jay also would not have negotiated on Split's behalf regarding this transmission line. He's an attorney. He's actually an adjunct professor at DU. He's well aware that Heartland is under a conservation easement, which I'll discuss more later. At this meeting, Three Corners Connector was apparently not shy about throwing out the threat of condemnation to Split. Jay, however, was adamant that Split would not be strong-armed, breaking faith with our funders, and would not be coerced into violating our legal agreements. And there's other plausible routes that the transmission line could follow through Bend County. Since that meeting 2 years ago, Split has gotten no communications on this transmission line, nothing that can in any way be construed as an ongoing conversation. Therefore, in our opinion, the application is factually incorrect. Again, Heartland is on a conservation easement. That restricts us from making a deal, any deal, even if we wanted to. Even if the person that owns the billionaire John Arnold offered a $10 million check right here saying, just please accept this so we can move on. We couldn't. We're not permitted to. The package also incorrectly states that we are the conservation easement. We're not. Colorado Open Lands, a separate organization, holds the conservation easement. If we were to say, okay, let's let this transmission line cross, they would sue us. They would take us to court. And this is something this was a surprise because Grid United knows how restrictive conservation easement is. If you look at the map, every other conservation easement in the other counties, they're going around. And if you listen to that meeting in Otero, they highlight that they carefully avoided all the conservation easements. So why not here in Benton County? That's all we're asking for. Again, we're not opposed to Three Corners Connector in Benton County and what they're doing. I think it's great. But we're adamantly opposed to having a transmission line cut across our property. We will strongly defend our property rights. And we would respectfully ask for the board to either vote no or ask for the applicant to find another route with another through other properties. Look at the map, we're not even the most direct path. And at $3 million a mile, there's probably better routes than running right through our conservation easement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Anybody else would like to make a comment? Okay.
Sorry.
State your name.
Sorry, I'm Carissa Hasser. And my father-in-law was one that was not sure about this project, and then he came to terms with Three Corners Connectors, and they truly went out of their way to help accommodate him on the ranch. And so I don't know what their experience has been. I just can tell you what our family's was, and unfortunately my father-in-law has passed. But I think anyone in this room who knew him knew that he was a bit of a handful sometimes, and I think he was for them. And the fact that they were able to come to terms with him actually sucks for them.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments? On Zoom? Any comments on Zoom you would like to voice?
Could I give a quick comment real quick?
Yes, please.
Alrighty. Hey, everybody. I don't know if people can see me. You might be wondering why I'm wearing a t-shirt. I'm actually on vacation right now. This is my only vacation of the year. I think that indicates what the dialogue has been like between Split and Three Corners. There has been no dialogue. And, you know, it's hard for me. I'm just going to say, like this meeting totally took us by surprise. We didn't know this was happening. I had to reach out to Bri and contact her to find out about this independently. We were never informed of this meeting. We were never informed of any meetings. We were never informed of the permit being submitted. We were never involved in any stakeholder process. It just seems crazy to me. And by the way, Carissa, I'm not trying to contradict you. It just seems like we are kind of the odd man out here. Like Split is being treated differently than other stakeholders. And I just have to put that on the record because ultimately, you know, we are willing to have conversations with you. By the way, Brian, it's great to meet you. It's great to meet you. I mean, I wish we could have had this conversation a year or two ago. This is the first time I've ever met you. And so ultimately, you know, it rubs me the wrong way when, you know, when you send me an email and the first email correspondence we ever had, and this is a direct quote, you said, "What I can't do is limit discussion to routes that avoid your preserve." And what that says to me is that you were intent on going through our preserve, despite the fact that it's legally conserved. I mean, we have legal obligations to fulfill here, as Martin has mentioned. But, you know, it's just the stakeholder first approach doesn't seem to have been applied to us. And there's been no discussions about any of the unique habitat or wildlife that we've got. I don't really understand that. We've never been invited to a landowner dinner. There were 20 community events that we apparently were not invited to. So I just want people to understand what the truth is here. And just to sum up, we are not opposed to this transmission line. We are all for economic benefits for Benton County. We are all for economic benefits to our neighbors, those that are willing. But we are getting railroaded here. Pardon, you know, to use that word. That's what it feels like to me. And so I would love to sit down with you, Bryant, and with people at your organization, because that's never happened. The only conversation I've ever had with anybody from Grid United or Three Corners is with the CEO, which was a short Zoom call in 2024, when he basically said, "Can we bring the transmission line through your land?" I said, "Well, are there alternative routes?" And they basically said no. And then we said, well, we can't do that because we have conservation easement on the property. So I just want people to know what's true here. I also want to mention, you know, just talking a little bit more about some of the community work that we've been doing. You know, we are a member of this community, and we've been a controversial member of this community for a long time, but that's changing. And we are starting to build community here. We've been working for the last 2 years on a community process in Benton County with local stakeholders, with the Benton County Historical Society. We've been in front of the city council. We've been in front of the city recreation committee. We're trying to build a public nature preserve for kids to go and enjoy that's close to town, easy access. we've gotten tons of grant funding to support that, and we're building that now. We are co-leading the, Colorado Parks and Wildlife Regional Partnership, which is trying to, make vibrant agricultural communities in southeastern Colorado. I mean, these are all things that are true. And so I just want people to understand, and I would be happy to talk to anybody in this room, Bryant, or anyone else who wants to have a discussion about this, but that hasn't happened thus far. So I also feel pretty strongly that until that discussion happens, and until there can be an actual dialogue about this route, then none of this makes sense to me. So that's my comment, and I appreciate all of your time. Thank you.
Yes, could you introduce yourself?
Guess I forgot the key thing there. I also work at Split. I'm the director of Split, and so I'm also here representing Split. Sorry about that.
What's your name? First and last.
My name is Henry Pollock. Pollock.
Thank you.
There's one more person online. If they could introduce themselves, even if they don't want to speak, so we have enough.
Okay, for the record, the other person online, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Taylor Michael with Tetra Tech. I'm the permitting consultant for Grid United.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to make a public comment?
I'm Alicia Hall. I just have a question. I don't know if this is the right situation to do it. I'd like to hear from Bryant about some of this, because I think there's obviously a disagreement on the communication that's been ongoing. I know landowners probably got a certified letter, which means this meeting was not a surprise. But I mean, if they're legally tied, like what they're saying, can you address that? Can you speak to that? Is that okay, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Sure. So I can say we have had more conversations with Southern Plains Land Trust than our average landowner, going back to at least 2023. Came up to Lamar, had a meeting with Ben, executive director, plus Jay Touchton, plus had Colorado Open Lands on the phone, had several others in attendance, went over maps, went over tons of different options. We understood from them at that time, like, hey, even if we wanted this, we couldn't sign something, we couldn't agree to it because we're legally bound to not. We understood that. We understood it wasn't an option. And I can also tell you, like, this was not our first route. This is not our preferred route at first, but the process we use talks to landowners up and down the line to try to figure out where's the place that we can get it that's going to make the most people happy possible. And that makes us make adjustments. And we made adjustments and made adjustments, and that put us on Southern Plains. We looked at a lot of different alternatives, both with people that were associated with Southern Plains and internally, to figure out what are all the different possibilities of the ways we can go through Southern Plains, if that's the way we have to go. What are all the different options of going around them? We had land agents go out and talk to landowners on multiple other routes to try to figure out ways to get around them. We would add about 25 miles to go around their property and basically follow their fence line for 25 miles. And to me, saying that the visual impacts of crossing for 5 miles are going to be too much to overcome. To me, it was hard to understand that it would be preferred to follow the fence line for 25 miles. So that's one side of it. And ultimately, I can just say we have had lots of conversations, not with the folks that are represented here today. This has been a process that's been going for years, and I can't speak to why board members weren't brought in or why other people weren't brought in. I can say, Dr. Pollock, you were invited to the meeting that we had. We had a landowner, actually, one of the neighbors, wanted to try to did a home cooked dinner for us to come together and to try to work this out. And Dr. Pollock was invited to that as well. And I don't know why I couldn't attend, but Jay did come. We did go through routing alternatives. He was very clear that this is not something that we don't want it. But if this, if you were to cross, this is the way that would be the most preferable. And that is the route that we have shown in the route we applied for.
So if they say that even if they wanted it, they are legally cannot do it, how do you go over that barrier?
I don't know if one of our Kirsten, is that something that might be best for you to address, or what's the?
We have not, we're not there yet. We're waiting for the permit before we get.
You have to figure that out. And is that the 6% one landowner? Is that split?
So along the whole almost 300 miles.
Introduce yourself.
Sorry, we're Out of protocol. I'm Kirsten Crawford. I'm from Kaplan Christian. I am one of the lawyers that represents this team.
And if question could be directed to the chair and then the chair.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yes. How would you like to proceed?
So we, because we don't represent SPLT and Colorado Open Lands, I'm not in a position where I can comment on their legal issues. We have ours sorted out, but some of that is confidential that we're not ready to disclose in the record.
In addition to this gentleman, you also have online. Just want to make sure you saw.
Yes. Online, Henry, do you have a question?
No, I don't have a question. Brian, look, I just want to tell you, I'm not trying to, stir stuff up here, but the reality is we've never met. You've never called me. We've never spoken on the phone. I've been working at Split since October 2023. There's been zero effort to reach out and make contact. We didn't know that the permit was even being submitted. I mean, you can ask Brian. We didn't know this meeting was happening. We didn't know about we weren't informed about the dinner last week. Like, I don't know if we're not getting mail. I check the mail every week. And so what you're saying just doesn't ring true for me. And so, and there may have been meetings prior to when I and Martin and Kyron were involved with Split, but it doesn't really jive that we wouldn't, if there was turnover in organization, there should have been some contact. Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
Yes, I think this commission understands the dynamic between both sides of this room. So I think it's better for us to move forward. Any other comments?
Do you have a paper map of exactly?
Could you introduce yourself?
Kenneth Dodson.
Thanks, Kenneth.
I must be an adjoining landowner. I was just wondering where the exact routes going on paper.
Yes, if the chair would like me to answer that,
yes, please.
We can provide. I don't have a printout, big one here, but happy to go over that with anybody that's interested.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Sir, I just want to make one more comment. Prior to this meeting, I wanted to make sure there's no confusion on if there has been conversations, because as Henry mentioned, he's been on only for 3 years. So I called the executive director before that. Had a conversation, also had a conversation with Jay, all the staff people. I've also had an email conversation with you, sir, asking about, has there been another meeting since this time? And
thank you for your comment. We understand the dynamic.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, if there's no further public comments, I just want to address the legal questions that were raised.
Yes, please.
Just to put those things on the record. As I stated in the staff recommendations, I'm just going to point again to the staff recommendations, which are public. The notice of hearing was published in the Benton County Democrat on July 2nd and met the minimum requirements of 15 days that are outlined in your manual. Written notice was sent by certified mail to adjoining property owners, and that was done on June 29th. And that met the minimum of 15 day requirement as well. There was a question raised, and so I just, for planning commission, however you all decide is obviously up to you. But a point was raised about a potential inability for you to recommend approval based on the Benton County regulations. I want to point out regulation A, the use is compatible with all existing uses on land adjacent thereto, where appropriate measures have been taken to alleviate such incompatibilities. Staff recommendation number 3 about the revegetation financial guarantee. Staff recommendation number 8 talks about complying with laws and regulations to avoid any interference with significant wildlife habitat, adversely affecting endangered wildlife species, unique natural resource, or historic landmarks within the project. Staff recommendation 9D, all disturbed areas shall be reclaimed in coordination with affected landowners as set forth in the reclamation plan. And then staff recommendation 9E, this talks about the range management specialist, making sure so an independent third party would go out and make sure the revegetation was complied with. So regardless of whether you want to approve the project or not, the staff recommendations does address mitigation of those risks. So I just wanted you to know that that was in there. Thank you.
Thank you. Last chance, any other public comment? None being heard, the chair would entertain a motion to close this portion of the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
Been moved and seconded to close the public hearing. Any discussion? None being heard, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. The Benton County Planning Commission now will consider the action item of approving or not approving the special review use permit and make a recommendation to the county commissioners.
I would recommend we approve. We would recommend to the commissioner that we approve it.
Would you be willing to consider?
That's all the motion.
You consider to add the administrative staff recommendations.
I make a motion. I'll second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the special use permit and recommended to the Benton County Commissioners. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, may I address the?
Yes.
Right.
You can, but you can't respond.
Okay.
I'll just share an opinion. My concern is if we pass this without a little bit of approval from Split, I think knowing who Split is, I've had several dealings with them. I'm afraid this is going to be a bear down in the courts if they want to push to that point. I don't think that's necessarily going to be a positive benefit for anybody for this project. On the other side of the coin, I guess Split needs to maybe come to a reckoning whether they want 25 miles of it along their property line or whether they want to give 5.8 miles to cross their property. So that's the other part of the quantity. So that's just my concern.
The motion on the table to approve special use permit. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes to recommend the approval to the Benton County Board of Commissioners. Chair will entertain a motion to close the special meeting.
So move.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? None being heard. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Special meeting is closed. Thanks, Charles. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Thanks for. Thank you, Linda.
That was a different.
Is there any way we can answer? When you get your mind. If you will, text me or call me and give me your.
I didn't know
And you're welcome to come across that. Our neighbors are gonna come stop.
That's okay.
I think I could. Okay. You want an answer? I'm gonna give you a. He'll be.
I honestly.
If you'll call me.
That's it.
We've got it.
Sorry.
Yeah, when I get one.
We're doing all right. If we rain last night.
Yeah, yeah. Whole process.
Everyone on everything's on plans is.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion that we reconvene the special meeting of the Bay County Commissioners.
Sir.
Been moved and seconded to reconvene the special meeting of the Bay County Commissioners. Our didn't we were okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
You don't need a motion to open the public hearing.
Okay, yeah.
Also, will we open public hearing?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded to open up the public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So motion carried. We are now in the special meeting for Three Corners Connectors permit. So,
Chair, if I may.
Yeah.
Rose Puglisi, County Attorney. This is an application for development of a transmission line and a fiber repeater station here in Bed County. You will, just to lay out how the hearing will go, you'll hear a presentation from the applicant. You can ask the applicant questions at the end of his presentation. Then you'll turn it to me and we'll go through all this, but you can turn it to me. I'll read through the staff recommendations and all the legal requirements that have been complied with. I do want to say the planning commission just met and recommended approval, just so that you know. I will also put that on the record during my staff recommendations, but just wanted to let you know that that has happened. And then after staff recommendations, you'll open it up to public comment. There may be public who wants to engage with the applicant. In order to keep decorum, I'm asking that everything be directed to the chair, and the chair, you can determine questions can be answered. Not forgetting people who are also in line. And then at the end, if there's any further staff comments, I will make whatever comments. And then we'll close the public hearing, and then you all can have a discussion. There is a resolution before you with staff recommendations as well. So that is our hearing for today. And with that, you can ask the applicant to do their presentation.
Commissioners, I'm gonna stay seated, if that's all right, to keep from blocking your view of the screen.
okay.
I'm Brian Kuhn. I believe we've all met and visited about this project as kind of the pre-development phase. We were doing some planning and outreach, but Brian Kuhn, developer for Three Corners Connector. And we're huge day after a long road of trying to get as many ducks in a row as we can to get this thing permitted and eventually built. We brought a few folks today along with us, and a few of us will speak, but just want to make sure we have the experts in the room in case you have any questions that I might not know about. But try to keep this pretty short, but just who's Grid United, what's the project, how did we come up with the route we came up with, what all goes into that, what are we looking to do in Grant County, and then help answer some questions. We work for a company called Grid United, based out of Houston. Hope you don't hold that against us, but we do work on projects across the country to help connect the grids. There's a need to be able to share power with our neighbors, whether it's in times of bad winter storms, heat of summer, we've got issues, some kind of issue on one side or the other, or just the fact that prices are never the same on both sides of the line. So the US grid, the US electric system is made up of 3 different grids: the eastern grid, the western grid, and ERCOT, which is most of Texas. And you can move a little bit of power between them, but not very much. And projects like this allow you to move a lot more power between them. They also allow, to be able to move power from where it's less expensive to where it's more expensive to save customers money. But also when you've got those reliability issues, it helps to be able to share with the neighbors. Generally, overall for the project, it's almost 300 miles. Starts up near Pueblo at the Comanche coal-fired power plant. Comes down through Otero, comes through Pueblo County, through Otero, through the southwest kind of portion of Bent County, down almost diagonal through Baca County, and then into Texas and Seminole counties in Oklahoma. We are looking for a 200-foot right of way. Christine here will give you a little more details on what the line's going to look like, how tall the poles are, that kind of thing. But it can transfer up to 3,600 megawatts, which, if all that power was being used for homes, would be in the millions. It carries quite a bit of power. And so one way to think about this is it's not just that we're connecting Pueblo and Guymon, Oklahoma. It's that we're connecting Colorado and Oklahoma, Texas Panhandle, Kansas, kind of more of a regional focus to benefit the regions as a whole instead of just kind of small areas. So there definitely will be benefits, both direct and indirect here in that county as well. We'll go over a few of those here in a few minutes. Because we're connecting 2 grids that are not synchronous with each other, we've got to have converter stations, and those are kind of big facilities that convert power from AC to DC and back again. We'll have one of those outside of Pueblo and one outside of Guymon. And the line between those will be DC. So direct current. You don't have to worry about AC induced current or corrosion or anything like that. We can go close to pipelines or railroads, and there are just some differences between that and AC power lines, but generally kind of less restrictive for DC lines. It's open to any source of generation. This is not a line that's just connecting a wind farm or a solar farm or whatever else. We're connecting 2 strong points on 2 grids, and it's open to whatever powers on either side. It's also about a $2 billion project. Those converter stations just on their own are about $1 billion, but overall, it's got about a 3-to-1 benefit to cost ratio. So over the 40 years it's in service, the customers in kind of the area that are going to get benefits, including here in Bent County, are going to see on the order of $6 or $8 billion of benefits over 40 years. So lots of benefits. You can see the route kind of as we go through the optional. We'll get closer on Bent County here in a minute, but turn over to Jack. Jack Middleton is our is a consultant that works for us and has been on the project for years now. We're Tetra Tech. We're an environmental firm that works across the country on all kinds of different projects, and just wanted him to talk a little bit about kind of how we come up with the route and how that process looks like.
Thank you, Brian. As Brian said, my name is Jack Middleton and I work for Tetra Tech. We're in charge of the routing, siting, and permitting for the Three Corners Connector project. Just have a really quick slide here that summarizes the routing process employed for Three Corners Connector. It's very similar to what we institute across the United States. It's an iterative process because we are trying to identify constraints. And what I mean by constraints is those could be anything from a cultural resource site, center pivot irrigation, any sort of significant hydrology, threatened endangered species. And so we use publicly available GIS layers to identify corridors where infrastructure may be placed to avoid those types of constraints as a first step. As a second step, we meet with federal and state agencies, the engineering team from Grid United and local officials to identify more constraints or in some cases opportunities like existing linear infrastructure that we may follow throughout the study area. And then we develop a preferred route or alternate route. And that is again refined as Grid United continues to meet with the landowner throughout the study area. I think we had over 100 route changes that were initiated from landowners. That's in addition to the route adjustments that we make before we even get to that stage. But those landowner preferences happen to identify things on the property that we don't know and is not publicly available. Small community cemeteries, landowner preferences with respect to how they manage and operate their land. And so the route is then adjusted again, and we go through that same processes of identifying and analyzing those resource constraints to make sure they're not hitting any of those. That adjustment didn't cause us to hit any of those as well. And so after all of that, we've come to a preferred alternative that we submit for permitting in 1041 or in the cases of a special use permit here in Benton County, and then seek to get a permitting approval of the final route. And after the final route is approved, you still are required to interact with state and local agencies with jurisdiction on siting infrastructure, and Grid United will be required to do that. And then on the right side, it tells a little bit about our survey access and right-of-way acquisition process.
All right, just a little bit about how we go about doing these type of projects. We do put a lot of effort into making sure that we're trying to get as many people on board as we can. We've got 94% of the land acquired in Benton County today. If you look at the project as a whole, we've got one landowner that we've not been able to acquire over this last 4.5 years that we've been working on it. I think that's a testament to the fact that we're willing to work with folks. I know, and it's not to say that everybody's been easy to deal with. We've definitely had, there might have been one or two in Benton County that were not easy to deal with, but we were able to get something worked out, and I think something that works for everybody, and really proud of that. We've had, like Jack mentioned, we've had about 100, I think it's right around 120, 116 shows on there, route changes where landowners said, either I don't want it to go away, and we've tried to figure out some other way to get to be where we can be on somebody who does want it, or they've said, I don't hate it, but I'd rather see it on my east line instead of my west line, or my house looks out this direction, can you move it to avoid impacting my view? And in most cases, pretty much almost all of them, we've been able to make adjustments to make folks happy. We also understand, we're the new kids on the block. We're not from around here, and our accents probably betray us on that a little bit, but we do want to make sure that we're being a good neighbor to the community, and probably seen us for the last 4 years now. I mean, there hasn't been a junior livestock sale. We hadn't bought a few animals. There hasn't been, some kind of need that we've at least tried to have some input, some impact on one way or another. We've got a grant program that we've got even here in Benton County. We've got Los Angeles Helping Hands. We've got the fire department. We've got lots of different groups that have been able to take advantage. So that Boggsville historical site, I think they got a grant in our last round to be able to do some improvements out there. So lots of stuff like that, but we understand that it really is part of our business plan too. It's not just, I'd like to be able to say it's out of the kindness of our hearts, but we understand that it's something that companies like ours ought to do. And so we want to make sure that we're doing those things that we ought to do. And that's something that we work really hard to do. Not to say that we're perfect, but we definitely want to give it our best shot. So been pretty successful so far in being able to do that. Talk about a few of the benefits a moment ago, but this just spells out a few others. Some of some of the issues that lines like this help are where you've got bad winter storms, especially where you've got kind of tight supplies on either here in Colorado or in Oklahoma and Kansas, because all of a sudden now the wind's not blowing, you can't get solar, and maybe even, we saw back in some of the winter storms back from 21 like Erie, where we had plants, even the natural gas plants, coal plants freezing up, and so because this line is long enough and because it connects two different grids, you're able to move power a far enough distance to be able to help kind of rely on your neighbors and help them out when they need it as well. We also help to provide lower cost power. So one thing that we see, right now, about half the hours out of the year, wholesale power prices in the Oklahoma Panhandle we're connected to are either zero or negative priced. There's a ton of land that doesn't have anywhere to go. And a line like this allows you to bring it to here to Colorado, and it's much cheaper than what you could either import from somewhere else or generate it yourself here during those times. So periods like that, you've got the ability to be able to save customers money. Also, whenever you have excess generation, then and prices work out, you're able to export as well. So it goes both ways. Line operates both ways and is able to change directions in just a fraction of a second. Some of the benefits, so I talked about some of the kind of bigger benefits where you've got, $6 or $8 billion of benefits to kind of customers over the broader area for 40 years, but also there are benefits that we think a line like this is going to bring to Benton County. Some of that's tax money. I've got a little bit on we had a consultant put together a projection on what the tax revenue would be. We're looking at somewhere in the order of 10 million for local improvement districts, about 3.5 million for schools, and about 4.5 to county over that 40 years. Plus, our landowner, direct payments directly to landowners in Benton County would be right around $12 million from starting the money we've already spent going up to through construction. There'll definitely be some jobs, some temporary jobs during construction, for a project like this. It does generate some of those. It's too early to say yet, how many of those could or would be people that do live here. There's a lot of stuff to figure out between now and then, but there'll be some construction jobs. And of course, it'll be definitely a period where RV parks and restaurants and hotels and all that'll be doing pretty well during construction also. I'll turn over to Christine. Christine's our project engineer that works on trying to make sure like what we're designing is the best it's gonna work.
Yeah, I'm Christine Lombardi. I'm part of the transmission line engineering team. So I'll go through a few slides talking about just the mileage and the types of structures that this project will have. So like Bryant mentioned, we've got about 47.4 miles of high voltage direct current that crosses through Benton County, and then one fiber repeater station, which will show a picture of an example for what that is. And then in addition to that, we'll have access roads, both temporary to allow for the construction vehicles to get to the locations and do the hauling, as well as permanent for operations and maintenance for the future transmission line. And then temporary workspaces. So around every structure, there'll be a small work pad that will be part of the workspace where they can set up the materials and have space to drill the foundation and erect the structure and then do the wire work. And then outside of the right of way, we'll have some laydown yards that'll be fenced properties, working with local landowners on private land to allow the storage of materials kind of locationally laid out within the land or within the line so that they don't have to haul the materials a large distance, as well as some concrete batch plants. And these are some pictures, some drawings of what the transmission line will look like. So the transmission line will be made up of tubular steel that'll be weathering in appearance, so kind of that natural rusted brown color. And all of the structures will be on concrete pier foundations that will go into the ground. The most of the line will be tangent structures, which look like this from the profile view. And these structures are used where we have long straight sections of the line. And then anywhere where we have angles or curves to the line, we'll use an angle or a dead end structure, which in the full build out will be 2 poles. The structures range from about 115 feet to 180, with the average height being 150 feet. And our typical spans are about 1,300 feet, so about 4 structures per mile. With the right-of-way distance on the total width being 200 feet, so centered, the structure will be and then 100 feet on either side. Average foundations are about 8 to 10 feet in diameter, and then depending on the soil that's encountered, they could go 24 to 35 or deeper in the length below ground. And this is an example of the fiber repeater station. So in addition to the transmission line carrying the actual conductor that carries the power, it'll also have a fiber optic communication cable that allows the networks to talk across the power grid and to send signals. And with that, we need to have an ability to boost that signal just to keep it strong. And so a few points throughout the project, we need this repeater station that helps increase that network connection and boost the fiber optic communications. So this area will be about a 60 to 80 foot fenced in area with this hut that has some electrical and communication equipment inside. It'll be an unmanned facility. That'll be either within our right of way or directly adjacent to it, so that the fiber optic can come into this hut and come back out. And it won't have any water or sewage system needed, but we'll have routine inspection and permanent access, like a sidewalk or a driveway to it. As far as the timeline, like Bryant said, we've been in development on this project since 2022. And a lot of that time to date, those 4 years, has been about finding the right path, working with landowners, and then getting ready for our permits, as well as progressing the engineering design for this project. And here we are working through the local permit system. The project could be ready for construction as early as 2027. And when it does start construction, it'll be about a 3 to 4 year construction duration for the entirety of the project. But the actual start date of construction will depend on kind of where our commercial partnerships end up and our progress through the later stages of development.
That's it.
Do you have any questions for the applicant? If not, then Mr. Chair, if it's okay with you, I'd like to give my staff recommendations.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. For the record, we will admit applicant's presentation as exhibit A. And then I have exhibits that will also be entered into the record. The final application submitted by Three Corners Connector LLC for the United Company is exhibit 1. It was a large application. We have a link to it. It's been made publicly available. Notice of the public hearing before the Board of County Commissioners is exhibit 2. Proof of publication of the public hearing notice as required by law and under your regulations in the Benton County Democrat is exhibit number 3. Letter regarding mineral owner notifications is exhibit number 4. This does not fall under statute for mineral owner notifications. And then staff recommendations is exhibit number 5. I do have to read these into the record, so be patient with me. I will try to read as quickly but legibly as possible. So the date of the public hearing is July 29, 2026. It was at 10 a.m. for Planning Commission, and Planning Commission recommended approval. It is at 11 a.m. for Board of County Commissioners. The place of the hearing is 725 Benton Avenue, Los Angeles, Colorado. The permit applicant is Three Corners Connector LLC for the United Company. The request is the development of approximately 290 up to 525 kilovolts high voltage direct current transmission line between Pueblo, Colorado and Guyman, Oklahoma, which includes 47.4 miles of HVDC transmission line and 1 fiber repeater station here in Benton County. The transmission line route generally will run southeast to northwest through Benton County. The application was submitted by the applicant and be paid on or about April 27, 2026. The final application with all requested attachments Per the Benton County Planning and Zoning Regulations, section 5.02.03 was deemed complete on May 14th, 2026. Notice to the applicant that the final application was deemed complete was provided on May 14th, 2026. Publication of the public hearing notice for the special review use permit regarding the application was published in the Benton County Democrat on July 2nd, 2026. Publication of the notice met the minimum 15-day publication requirement outlined in the Benton County Planning and Zoning Regulations, section 5.02.02. Written notice regarding the public hearing was sent out by certified mail to property owners adjoining the proposed project on or about June 29th, 2026. Mailing of the notices met the 15-day notification requirement outlined in the Benton County Zoning and Planning and Zoning Regulations, section 5.02.02. No mineral owner notifications were required per the attached letter from the Three Corners Connector. Barring any discovery at the public hearing, it is the opinion of staff that the applicant has shown compliance with the Benton County zoning regulations. Within your zoning regulations, they must meet A, the use is compatible with all existing uses on adjacent land thereto, or appropriate measures have been taken to alleviate such incompatibilities. And I will point out as I read the staff recommendations where some of that applies. B, the use will not unnecessarily scar the land or soil upon which the use is to be placed, leaving deleterious effects on the denuded slopes, uncovered oil piles to be blown away, sparse upon areas of natural historic value. C, uses with unsightly odors or noise or setback, a sufficient distance from adjacent property boundaries and proper fencing or screening is provided so that adjacent property is not adversely affected. The use shall comply with all applicable air and water pollution control legislation. And E, the use is consistent with an orderly pattern of development within the county as consistent with the adopted master plan. The following development standards and conditions are recommended. Staff is recommending approval of the special use permit subject to these conditions. No grading, site preparation, or construction activity may occur on the site until the special use permit has been granted to applicant. Before commencement of construction, Three Corners Connector is to provide $3.6 million revegetation financial guarantee or bond held in favor of Benton County. 10% or $360,000 shall be a cash deposit held with the Benton County Treasurer. 90% of this amount, or $3,240,000, shall be represented by a bond issued in favor of Benton County. The bond must be renewed every 5 years. Revegetation and reclamation of the above described property must be properly completed and done. Such revegetation and reclamation to be approved by the Benton County Board of County Commissioners in accordance with the revegetation classification standards and special conditions for 1041 permits, higher standard. Applicant shall address any reasonable concerns or objections of any state or local agency or government that may arise during or after construction or maintenance of the project. Before commencement of construction of the project, applicant shall verify to the commissioners and the Benton County Land Use Administrator that it has acquired all necessary easements or property rights to complete the project. Before commencement of construction of the project, applicant shall submit verification to the commissioners and the Benton County Land Use Administrator that is complied with and received all necessary permits and approvals as applicable from local and state governmental entities. Applicant shall enter into a road use agreement with the county setting forth the roads to be used during construction and applicant's financial responsibility for repair or additional maintenance of roads affected by construction. And so as county attorney, I will prepare a road use agreement, negotiate it with the applicant, obviously with input from the Board of County Commissioners. Again, as we've always talked about, trying to leave the county in as good, if not a better position as it was in prior to construction. Applicant shall comply with applicable laws and regulations to avoid or mitigate interference with any significant wildlife habitat or adversely affected any endangered wildlife species, unique natural resource, or historic landmark within the project. And this goes towards mitigation. Applicant shall comply with the following requirements. The permit shall be limited to the plans shown in the application as mapped at the final hearing of the commissioners, with the exception of any change of placement within the property of participating landowners or county right of way, which would not be considered a substantial change to the permit. So if they're gonna change their footprint in a significant way, they have to come back before you and you have to approve that amendment. Substantial changes from the plans or development standards as shown or stated shall require applicants to apply for and obtain approval of an amendment of the permit by the county commissioners before such changes or of the plans or development standards are permitted. So this way you're always knowing what is going on and then you approve those changes. Copies of all appropriate permits and approvals of federal, state, and local agencies obtained by applicants shall be forwarded to the Benton County Land Use Administrator. Any construction done within Benton County right of way will require a right of way permit obtained from the Benton County. It says Public Works Department. It should say Benton County Land Use Administrator. My apologies on that. And that is an amendment to the staff recommendations. All disturbed areas shall be reclaimed in coordination with the affected landowners as set forth in the applicant's reclamation plan or in accordance with the landowner easements or licenses as applicable. Again, this goes towards the mitigation requirement. Once construction and revegetation of the project is completed, the range management specialist shall be allowed to access the site to perform one inspection each year. The Benton County Land Use Administrator shall promptly forward to applicant copies of all reports or recommendations of the range management specialist. When revegetation is established and deemed complete by the range management specialist, Benton County will release the revegetation bond and reimburse applicants 10% cash deposit. Now, you all are used to this under your 1041s for the water and reclamation revegetation, right? You have Jerry who goes out there and does a report. Whether you go out to RFP or somehow the county would have to hire that range management specialist. I want to point out, just because we're going through our 1041 regulation update process, right now the application fee is $50 for a transmission line under your current regulations. We cannot charge any more. And applicants, and I'll talk a little bit more about this at the end. The cost deposit is not required under your current special use permit. Applicant is willingly putting the cost deposit and doing this higher level of revegetation, even though your land use regulations do not require it. But I do want to point out to you that the range management specialist would be paid for by the county. And so it is part of the reason we are updating our 1041 regulations to make sure the county can be reimbursed. But I just want to point that out to you. Applicant shall not permanently dispose of waste within the project areas. Applicant shall store and remove for final disposal in a manner that protects against surface and groundwater contamination, all liquid and solid waste as defined in the Solid Waste Disposal Sites and Facilities Act. Applicant shall manage, store, and dispose of waste materials in a manner that reasonably controls debris, flowing debris, and other potential nuisance conditions in conformance with the applicable laws and regulations. To the extent feasible, excuse me, to the extent reasonably feasible, applicant shall control throughout the project area all fugitive of dust, either from construction or transportation of equipment, in conformance with the applicable laws and regulations. Applicant shall comply with all the foregoing development standards as set forth in this section, and non-compliance with any of the foregoing development standards shall be subject to the enforcement provisions of the regulations. The construction and operation of this project must meet or exceed all applicable federal, state, and local requirements, and the site is to conform to all applicable zoning and building permit requirements and be maintained to acceptable standards as of the date of this agreement. Applicant shall comply with any and all Benton County Health Department requirements in their entirety. Applicant shall comply with all state, county, local, and federal regulatory requirements, permits, decrees, and other approvals applicable to the development and activity. This permit is limited to the project as described in the application and may be amended during this public hearing, either orally or in writing, and as approved. The permit conditions includes all the agreements and representations of the applicant made during the public hearing process. Applicant shall notify the commissioners of any proposed change to the project features or operations, and the commissioners shall determine whether an amendment to this permit would be required to ensure the changes do not violate any standards in the Benton County regulations and will not violate the terms and conditions of this permit. If the commissioners determine that any material representation made by the applicant in the application or during the public hearing process is false or deliberately misleading, the commissioners may pursue an enforcement action for violation of this permit. Any material change in the construction, use, or operation of the project, together with the applicant's commitments of record, shall require a permit amendment. For these purposes, a material change shall be any change in the project which significantly changes the nature of impacts considered in approval of the permit, including changes resulting from permits by other governmental organizations or appropriate courts of law. If the applicant fails to take substantial steps to commence the activities for which the permit is issued within 60 months from the date of issuance of this permit, then the permit may be revoked or suspended by the commissioners following notice and public hearing. The applicant must provide a project status report within 24 months. The commissioners may, in its discretion, extend that time period to begin the project upon written request by applicant following a public hearing. The permit shall be valid indefinitely for the life of the project, provided the applicant is in compliance with the permit. If shown to be necessary, the commissioners may, in its discretion, extend the term of the permit upon written request of applicant following a public hearing. The permit may only be transferred or assigned in whole or in part upon written approval of the commissioners. Any proposed transferee or assignee to the permit shall demonstrate it can and will comply with all the terms and conditions of the permit. And that is the end of my staff recommendations. I just wanted to make one comment that that in working with the applicant and as the Ontario County Attorney as well, the project passes through, we were able to align. They have a 1041, so a higher standard. You all have a special use permit, but the applicant did agree to use the higher standard in your special use permit. So I just wanted to put that on the record. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions the commissioners might have.
So they're doing the higher standard as far as like the revegetation part of things, but we still cannot have like the cost of staff involved in reporting and stuff. Built into it.
Thank you, Commissioner. So your current regulations and current fee schedule only, you've only collected $50 application fee to cover staff costs. Clearly that's not going to cover staff costs, not even a little bit, but at this time, so we make the changes, which will be coming before you in a couple of weeks, to your 1041 permits and putting that higher standard into your regulations with a different fee schedule, which I will recommend, which will be significantly higher than $50. That should be able to cover all of your costs, and there'll be provisions in there to make sure that the county is not in a situation where you're expending funds on behalf of the developer, really. We should be able to cover your costs, but unfortunately, based on the regulations at the time of the application, no fault of the applicant, but we just weren't there yet. So we're gonna fix all of that moving forward, but now we cannot collect anything more than $50. If you have no further questions, you can open it up to public comment.
Okay. Yes, sir.
My name is Aaron Angiani. I have a statement I'd like to read.
Okay.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Good afternoon. My name is Kyron Andriani, and I'm the Conservation Director for Southern Plains Land Trust and a resident of Bent County. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I urge you to reject the proposed transmission line across Heartland Ranch because it would permanently impair publicly protected conservation lands, fragment a critical wildlife corridor, and authorize a use that is incompatible with the property's conservation easement. Heartland Ranch is not simply a private property. It is a land that has been voluntarily conserved in perpetuity for the benefit of the public through a deed of conservation easement held by Colorado Open Lands. The easement was established to protect a continuous reach of native shortgrass prairie and preserve the property's natural habitat, scenic open space, and educational values for future generations. This reflects Colorado's public policy. Colorado Revised Statute 33-1-101 declares that wildlife and their environment are to be protected, preserved, enhanced, and managed for the benefit and enjoyment of the people of this state. Colorado taxpayers have also invested heavily in conservation easements because they produce lasting public benefits. The 2024 Colorado State University study estimated that conservation easement tax credits have generated between $35 and $57 billion in cumulative public benefits, returning approximately $31 to $49 in public value for every dollar invested. Those investments were made with the understanding that permanently protected lands would remain permanently protected. The proposed transmission line directly conflicts with that commitment. The conservation easement expressly prohibits conveying rights of way for utility corridors, whether temporary or permanent. A high voltage transmission line serves no conservation purpose and is fundamentally incompatible with the easement's stated objectives. The ecological impacts would also be significant and permanent. The proposal includes a 500-foot utility corridor extending approximately 5.8 miles across Heartland Ranch, together with a permanent 200-foot right-of-way affecting roughly 492 acres of protected land. Construction is only the beginning. The line would require perpetual inspections, vegetation management, repairs, and maintenance access. Heavy equipment and vehicle traffic would repeatedly disturb a landscape that is legally protected for public conservation value. To this point, Three Corners has also made no plan to ensure the safety of their workers on site from our free roaming herd of bison. Heartland Ranch currently provides a continuous wildlife corridor supporting 12 species of greatest conservation need identified by the Colorado State Wildlife Action Plan. Fragmenting this corridor would permanently reduce habitat connectivity and diminish one of the largest remaining expanses of conserved native shortgrass prairie in the Southern Plains. Moreover, Three Corners has made no provisions for mitigation of impacts to wildlife, a necessary component of an energy development plan. The visual impacts would also be equally lasting. Steel transmission towers, overhead conductors, and wide cleared rights of way would permanently alter the scenic character of the landscape that the conservation easement was created to preserve. Ultimately, this decision is about more than one transmission line. It is about whether conservation easements in Colorado will continue to mean what they say. These agreements exist to protect important landscapes in perpetuity. If a prohibited utility corridor can be placed across protected conservation lands, it undermines public confidence in Colorado's conservation programs and weakens the value of every conservation easement supported by taxpayers. I respectfully ask you to reject this proposal and require that the transmission infrastructure be located where it does not permanently impair conservation lands and the public benefits they are established to preserve. Thank you for your time and consideration.
If I may, I'd also like to speak on behalf of the Southern Plains Land Trust. Thank you, Commissioners, for the opportunity to speak. My name is Martin Hertz. I'm a board member of Southern Plains Land Trust. I'm here to defend Southern Plains Land Trust private property rights. We believe in the importance of property rights and have always acted with that as our North Star. Every single expansion of our preserve system was in cooperation with willing sellers. I want to focus, you've already heard from Kyron about the ecological impact on the property. I just want to share with you a little bit more about the economic impact that split brings to Benton County. In the past 3 years, split brought in over 10 million in new funding to Southeast Colorado, and that's primarily Benton County. That alone is more than the economic benefit claimed for the construction of this project, $10 million. Split has a staff about a half dozen right now, and it's looking to grow even further. Each year, Split pays about $25,000 in property taxes, primarily in Benton County. We're a nonprofit, so technically you don't have to, but Split chooses to be a good neighbor. Split also brings hundreds of people into Southeast Colorado that normally would never have visited. Recently, they hosted the inaugural Southern Plains Birding Festival, brought in folks. There's regular volunteer weekends throughout the year. Not to mention researchers from CSU and other universities that are stationed here doing research on this hard to replace asset that is Heartland Ranch. Let me take a step back. I also want to tie this in with the conversation before. The reason why we're talking here is because when Three Quarters Connector mentions the 93% of the properties that have accepted the where the line goes, we're that remaining chunk. So that's the context of this here. We have many more tourism initiatives in the works, but all of them require the main preserve, Heartland Ranch, the one that we're talking about right here, to remain intact. For the record, Split is not opposed to the work that Three Corners Connector is doing. The transmission line gets built. It'll be a boost to the local economy. It'll help the local tax base. That's great. All we're asking for is that our private property rights be respected, and they work with other willing landowners. I'm also here to formally contradict an inaccurate statement on the Grid United's application. On page 21, they state through Three Corners Connector LLC's stakeholder first approach. Three Corner Connector LLC have been in an ongoing conversation with the Southern Plains Land Trust regarding the location of the easements, but has not come to agreement on the proposed route. The statement's just not true. We have to be clear here. We are not in an ongoing conversation, never have been. Now at the last planning meeting, there was a back and forth on are we in discussion or not. I wanted to head this off before the meeting, so I reached out directly to Mr. Kuhn in an email exchange asking him, has there been any conversations since the last one that we're aware of, which was over 2 years ago? I'd be happy to read that email into the record or submit it as evidence that indeed there's been no conversations in the enjoining 2 years. In the previous meeting, the executive director was on the Zoom call, confirmed that he has not been in any meetings. I have directly spoken with the previous executive director. This is going back over 3 years ago. She confirmed also in our capacity as a representative of Southern Plains Land Trust, there have been no discussions. So again, you tell me what you want to do, because I don't want this to be, I don't want to put you in a bad situation where you have to decide. I'm happy to provide the evidence that I have. And I respectfully request the same. If they're in conversation, if they've put together a proposal, please share it. And again, why does this matter? Per the Benton County Special Review Use Application requires that the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners shall approve an application for special review use permits only if the county commissioners find that all the following conditions are met. The use is compatible with all existing uses of land adjacent thereto, or appropriate measures have been taken to alleviate such incompatibilities. So is statement number one true? No. The transmission line is and its construction would cause irreparable harm to existing land uses on our land ranch. I'm going to speak to the economic impact. It will heavily impact our ability to attract donors and supporters due to the damage viewshed, the native landscape, and the impact on the animals. Much of the $10 million that Split has brought in over the past 3 years has been by taking donors to Heartland Ranch, letting them enjoy the prairie, letting them see the wildlife. I just found out that a donor that just came to the birding festival is going to be giving $100,000 to the organization, which will be reinvested back into Benton County just because of that experience of going on site, not seeing construction, not seeing transmission, not seeing concrete trucks running across the property. This will have a direct and meaningful impact on us. And I'll be happy to go through the meetings that we have had so far. The last one we can document was July 3rd, 2024. And this is also one that's confirmed the email. That was not between the executive director. And it was with the preserve manager, Jay. Now, Jay's also an attorney. He manages the bison herds. He's also an attorney. He's an adjunct professor at DU. He knows that we're under a conservation easement. And this is something that Karen's already alluded to. We're not in a position to negotiate. The application package before we also is incorrect. We do not hold that conservation easement. A group called Colorado Open Land holds conservation easement. If Southern Plains Land Trust was willing to accede to a transmission line cutting across the property for no matter what amount of money, Southern Plains Land Trust would be sued by Colorado Open Lands because they're not fulfilling their legal obligations. Like I said in the previous meeting, if the person that owns Three Corners Connector he's got the money. He's a billionaire in Texas. If he even showed up here and was sitting there and said, here, $20 million, just let it go. We'd have to say, no, thank you, sir. We can't take this. We cannot take money. We cannot permit this to happen. It would be breaching our duties. And what is really baffling is this is not news to Grid United. In their other presentations to the Otero County Commission that's online, they highlight how they're carefully going around every conservation easement. They've gone around conservation easements in Pueblo County, Otero County, 3 different ones. If you look at the map, you will see that if they go around it, it is only Heartland that is going directly through. And as came up in the meeting earlier today, it's a matter of cost. It would cost more to wrap around us, which I understand that. That's business. It costs money to wrap more, but we're not in a situation to even say, yes, that's okay, and accept it going through this. So at the end of the day, I would just like to respectfully recommend to the commissioners that they respect that you understand the importance of private property rights to us. There's been threats of condemnation already put forward to us. We don't want that to happen. We want to follow our legal obligations, and we ask you to reject the application before you. Thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Chair, if Mr. Hertz wants to submit anything for the record, I would ask that he do it now.
May I read it in? Would that be okay? Is that permitted? Are you as attorney or is that okay if I read our email?
It's up to me.
It's up to you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah. If it's something that's pertinent, then I see no reason to object to it.
This is an email that I sent to Brian Kuhn on July 16th. Hello, Mr. Kuhn. I understand that you are a senior development director at Grid United and were responsible for the submission of the Benton County Special Review Use application for the Three Corners Connection Line. I'm a board member for Southern Plains Land Trust, also known as Split, and have recently received a copy of your application package. Your application has been shared with both staff and board Split. It has also been shared with Colorado Openlands, the conservation easement holder on Heartland Ranch in Benton County. On page 21 of the application package, you made the following statement: through Three Corners Connector. It's the same statement I read out to you before about the ongoing communication. I said, could you clarify with whom Grid United has been in ongoing conversation at Southern Plains Land Trust? No board member nor staff person affiliated with Southern Plains Land Trust can recall any written or verbal outreach from Grid United in 2025 or 2026. We would appreciate your prompt response, including the identity of any person or persons you have corresponded with, as well as the relevant details of the dates of communication. Split remains in opposition to the proposed route of the transmission line. Intends to express its opposition during the upcoming public meeting in Benton County on July 29th. Now, if I may read Mr. Kuhn's response, came in July 17th. Mr. Hertz, thank you for reaching out. Our application was filed with Benton County in early August 2025 and represented the status of our conversation with Split as of the time of submission. Up to August 2025, we had electronic and in-person communication with Split representatives regarding the proposed route cited along section lines and existing roads through the conservation easement on, this is important, multiple occasions between April and October 2023. We met in person with Jay Touchton, Split's preserve manager, on July 3rd, 2024. We're in agreement. That was a meeting that happened at which we discussed route placement and survey access. Dr. Pollock was also invited to that meeting, but declined to attend. I also placed courtesy telephone calls to Dr. Pollock and Jay Tuxton on July 28th, 2025, 1 week prior to filing, to notify them that we plan to file our application with the proposed route we had previously discussed. While I left messages asking each to call me back if anything has changed, those messages were not returned. We remain willing to meet with Split's board and staff ahead of the July 29 meetings, and I would welcome the opportunity to do so. Please know what times work.
Mr. Chair, so we'll be admitting exhibit number 6, which is written comments and review letters received. Mr. Hertz, after this meeting, if you can just get us a copy of that so we can formally admit it into the record, that would be great. Thank you.
Yes.
I- It's a hassle. I'm just gonna reiterate what I said in the last meeting. I don't know what their experience was. I can tell you what our family experience was. The line is going across handsprings. It was a bit of a project to get that done. My father-in-law was not sold on this project, was not excited about this project, and he had a lot of ideas. And I can say Three Corners was actually a good partner with him to find a way to make that happen. And so I kind of have to believe there's a way forward, and maybe there's not. But like I said, I can't speak to their experience. I can only speak to our own. But from a landowner in Benton County perspective, that's what I have to say.
Anyone else? No other.
Mr. Chair, if I may, the board did receive two other written comments, as I said, which will be exhibit 6. It was 2 letters of support, one from Representative Ty Winter and one from Senator Rod Pelton supporting the project. And there was another one. Do you have another copy of that?
So, okay.
We'll make up another copy. There was another letter from the Colorado Farm Bureau region, supporting the project as well. And Mr. Chair, if you would not mind asking the people online, even if they're not gonna speak, if they could, just give their names for the record.
Okay. Does anyone online have any comments?
This is Taylor Michael with Tetra Tech, Three Corners Connector Permitting Consultant. I don't have a comment, but just stating my name for the record.
And our other attendee, could you state your name and?
We'll just listen. Let it go. Let me read it out loud. Click on recording before. We can. Okay, so phone number 1-620-384-4073.
Mr. Chair, if I can just address, full of the comments, I just wanted to point out for the record. Again, one of your considerations is that the use is compatible with all existing uses on land adjacent thereto, or appropriate measures have been taken to alleviate such incompatibilities. I just want to draw your attention to staff recommendation number 3, which talks about the revegetation financial guarantee and cost deposit. Staff recommendation number 8 that talks about complying with all applicable laws and regulations to avoid or mitigate interference with any significant wildlife habitat or adversely affecting any endangered wildlife species, unique natural resource, or historic landmark within the project. Staff recommendation number 9D. All disturbed areas shall be reclaimed in coordination with the affected landowners as set forth in the applicant's reclamation plan or in accordance with the landowner easements or licenses as applicable. And staff recommendation 9E, that once construction revegetation of the project is completed, that you will have a range management specialist, so an independent third party evaluate and make sure it complies. So not saying you should or should not approve the project, but you do have in your staff recommendations the mitigation elements to meet that criteria. Thank you. There's no further,
Comments? We adjourn the special meeting,
so we'll need a motion to close the public hearing.
public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
And seconded to close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. We will now reconvene the special, or this,
Now you just have your action item, if you want to consider approval. And I have prepared before you a resolution which incorporates the staff recommendations. I will make that one change and send it to Linda about public works and changing that to the Benton County Land Use Administrator before you all sign off on it. Actually, it's just Alan, that's on the resolution. I'm sorry, it's when Commissioner Scott. But all of the staff recommendations, unless you all have other changes that you'd like to propose, are included in your resolution, which will issue the actual special use permit.
It appears that our staff is very thorough in going through all of this. And I really appreciate the planning commission and the work that they've done on this, so thank you all for that.
do I have a motion?
I move we approve resolution 2026-11. Issuing a special review use permit in the county of Benton, state of Colorado, Three Corners Connector LLC, a Grid United.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 2026-11. A resolution issuing a special review use permit in the county of Bent, state of Colorado, to Three Corners Connector LLC, a Grid United company. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Do we need a roll call?
Not necessarily unless you want to.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
that's fine. Easier, simpler, the better. So. And we have ayes. So motion carried. Any further business? Do I have a motion?
Second.
Moving seconded to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor? Motion carried.